And next up, we're about 10 minutes ahead of schedule. Thanks, Chris, for saving me there. Chris Troutner, Permissionless Software Foundation, is going to talk about how to get started as a Bitcoin Cash application developer. It's all yours, Chris.
Thanks, George. Yeah, I appreciate the extra time that Jeff gave me. Sure, I'm going to share my screen. And just real quick, George, can you tell me if you can hear me okay, and can you see the screen okay?
Yes, I can see your browser. Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So I'm going to introduce Fullstack.cash, which is a very similar to what Jeff just presented with Block. I got to give a compliment to Jeff. I'm sure he's not aware of it because I haven't been in communication with him. But Block has been a big inspiration for me doing competitive analysis. So for people who are unaware, Fullstack.cash has its roots in Bitcoin.com. We were doing very similar services, and so Block was a big part of our like competitive analysis. And so one of the things I'll try and do is differentiate how what I'm doing at Fullstack.cash is different than what they're doing at Block. But what I was hoping to present today in this meeting is just keep it at a very high overview and help people understand at a high level, what does it mean to be a Bitcoin Cash application developer? How is that different than being a protocol developer that works on a full node? And more importantly, like how does one with an entrepreneurial mindset in this space get started building software and making money and using Bitcoin Cash to its full potential? So I'll start with this animation that's playing right here. And in fact, I'll scroll down, and everything I'm going to present you can access at Fullstack.cash. And everything I'm going to present today, is essentially linked from this page. So this is the one thing that you need to know if you want to follow along later. So at a high level, when I talk to non-technical people about what it is that I do in the Bitcoin Cash space, I say, those apps that are on your phone. Well, I don't build those apps, but I build tools for building those apps. And so that's really what it comes down to is this is a framework. What Fullstack.cash provides is a framework, essentially a roadmap of if you want to build a phone app or a web app that talks to the blockchain, like how do you get started? Like so when you have a roadmap, one of the first things you got to do is figure out where you are on that map. So unfortunately, I can't put a big red arrow for everybody saying you are here, but I'll talk about how to find your place in this map. But first, let me talk about the map. So this is a stack, and conceptualizing a software stack is traditionally been very helpful throughout the history of computing to sort of understand how all these different pieces fit together. And I'm going to make a lot of analogies to Legos. I think a lot of everybody has played with Legos, and they understand Legos, how you can take like that one flat Lego and then start sticking all the other Legos on. And that's very much the approach that Fullstack.cash is taking. So if you look at this picture, those first three layers on the bottom, that's where the full node is, and that next level up from the full node where it says ElectrumX and SLP database. These are examples of indexers, and indexers are like search engines. So if you think of like Google, which is a search engine, what does it do? It crawls all the web pages on the internet, and it tries to make sense of what it finds. So if it finds a web page that talks about honey, it'll be like, okay, well, bees produce honey, so I'm going to kind of link to bees, and honey has health benefits, so I'm going to link to that. So when someone types in something to do with honey, it has this sort of context to understand the raw data that it found on the internet. And in the same way, that's what indexers do. They crawl the blockchain. They talk to a full node, and they crawl the blockchain, and they try and make sense of the data that they find there. And a different indexer will focus on different things. So for instance, ElectrumX, that's concerned with address balances and UTXOs, which are a really important concept. If you don't know what UTXOs are, I'll show you where you can find out more about that. If you want to get into development, understanding UTXO is a very important concept that you should understand. Then there's like other indexers like the SLPDB or the SLP database, which is just concerned with SLP tokens. And so it's crawling the database and it's trying to track all the SLP tokens that are out there. And that's essentially how you use SLP tokens. And because there's all these specialized pieces of software under there, it's a big ask for businesses, for every business, to understand Bitcoin Cash at that very low technical level. And so what these stacks do is they're adding abstraction. So every time you go up one layer in the stack, you don't have to worry so much about the technical details of the stacks below them. Each layer adds a level abstraction where you can go, it gets easier and easier and easier to solve business problems. So those two layers are those two bottom layers is what we'd call infrastructure. And then that layer on top, where it says REST API, that's like a gateway. And Jeff was speaking to this is they provide REST APIs. And what a REST API is just a way for one computer on the internet to talk to another computer on the internet. It's just a communication standard, but it's virtually how everything on the internet runs today. So if you go to Twitter, it's going to load. What you'll notice, it all happens in a few seconds. So you got to really be fast if you want to see this, but you'll see that it just loads a bunch of empty boxes. That's the very first thing you'll see. And then it populates all those empty boxes with the data, and it's getting all that data from the REST API. Same thing in YouTube. You go to YouTube, you're going to see a bunch of empty boxes for about like 1 second, and then it's going to fill all those boxes with content, and all that content's coming over the REST API. So that's an example of how REST APIs are used on the modern internet today, and how important they've become to the internet. So what we did is we built our own REST API. In fact, it got started the last 2 years at Bitcoin.com. I've since left and been developing it, continuing the development of that. So we have our own REST API. So businesses that use our software, they don't need to know the ins and outs of full nodes, and they don't need to know the ins and outs of indexers, which indexer's better or whatever. They can just focus on the REST API. This gives them one documentation that they can study and run with. And so at Fullstack.cash, our focus is on the JavaScript programming language. That's sort of the horse that we've bet on, and sort of a differentiating thing that we've done. We don't try to support other programming languages. We're just focused on JavaScript. But what the REST API does is it works with every programming language. So if you're not a JavaScript developer, if your business is based on a different type of programming language, we still have something to offer you, because the REST API is pretty agnostic. So don't let the fact that we're focused on JavaScript derail you from taking advantage of the value here. And so then on top of the REST API is a JavaScript library. And that's not super important, because what's really important is that final layer on top, the your app. And that's what I want to spend the rest of this time talking about, is that gray app that's your app. And so if your app, it happens to be written in JavaScript, then you can take advantage of that JavaScript library, and it makes everything easier. And it doesn't have to be. If it's not written in JavaScript, you can still use the REST API. Any programming language can take advantage of that REST API. It's just that if you start out of the gate with JavaScript, you got a few more tools in your tool belt right out of the gate. So now that I've kind of covered that basic, what those layers are, let's talk more about what it means to even develop an app on Bitcoin Cash. So the best way I know to do this is just to give some examples. So one website that's been incredibly popular in this space is read.cash. And so it's like Medium. You can do long form blog posts, people can comment, but the innovation that read.cash brought to the space is leveraging Bitcoin Cash so that you can tip people for writing articles. You can even tip the comments. And so that tipping of the comments affects where they are in the position, like which comment people are going to read first. And I found that to be very innovative, because now you can put your money where your mouth is. Like, not only can you display, your preference for a comment, you can back it up with real money. You can thank them financially for leaving that intelligent comment. And I think that's a huge innovation, and it's unlocked by the software that I just talked about. Memo.cash, another website, it's popular in the space, but has not really gotten very popular outside the space. I think it will in the future. I think that this is a diamond in the rough here, because it's Twitter. It's everything that you know and love about Twitter, but it's on the blockchain. And because it's on the blockchain, it cannot be censored. No government entity can stop you from writing content to the blockchain. And so memo.cash is one way to do that. And then this protocol was expanded with member.cash, which is similar to Reddit. It's more of a long form post and format, but it uses the same technology. And I love these two sites. I always use them as cases for a good Bitcoin Cash applications, because when the guy who created memo.cash created the protocol and the website, he never gave any consideration to what became member.cash. Member.cash came later, but because everything's on the blockchain and all the raw data is on the blockchain, he was able to build a whole new app and repackaging the existing data, the existing user accounts, and the existing technology and protocols to build something completely new. And I think that additional technology is going to be built on this platform. We're going to see a whole bunch of websites in the future that use this technology. So these are some good examples of what I mean by a web app that talks to the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. Let's look at another one, local.bitcoin.com. This allows people to trade Bitcoin Cash. Virtually any good can be traded for Bitcoin Cash. And there's this escrow system so that the buyer and the seller, they negotiate over an encrypted messaging system. They come to an agreement. The buyer puts up the Bitcoin Cash in escrow. The seller does whatever they need to do in order to fill the terms of the agreement. And then when that's done, the buyer releases the escrow and everybody's happy. But if everybody's not happy, if there's a dispute, there's this escrow system, and it's a unique technology. I'm gonna use the word innovation here because I was really inspired by Per Bylan, who was on earlier talking about innovation versus invention, and so I think that was a really good point in that a lot of these things are innovative. The difference is not only are they new inventions, but they actually cater to needed hair on fire problems. And that's what I'm hyper focused on, is these hair on fire business problems that Bitcoin Cash can solve. So getting back to this escrow, what is so cool about this, and the reason why it is sort of a legal loophole, is that the escrow person, they can mitigate and arbitrate, but they don't have any power to take the money. The only power they have is to decide which party gets the money. And that's called a double blind escrow, because the person's not even aware, the escrow person's not even aware that the trade's going on unless there is a dispute. Then they step in. If law enforcement was to come to Bitcoin.com and say, hey, we don't like what you're doing, you need to, give us all that money, we're going to take all your money, they're going to say, you can't, we don't even have that ability, can't be evil. And so this is another excellent example of an application built on that stack of technology that I was just talking about. So let me kind of walk through a little more. So I'm hoping that there's developers and entrepreneurially minded people that are excited by this. They want to know a little bit more. So let me go a little deeper. If you scroll down further on the Fullstack.cash webpage, we've got examples with quick start code on how to get up and running. We've got free infrastructure for you to use. You don't have to pay anything. We've got documentation. And in fact, let me just speak to each page here. This is the examples page. And this button here will take you to a whole bunch of quick start examples. Getting back to those Lego blocks, we have these examples broken down into little Lego blocks. So if you want to write some data to the chain, we've got a very simple example to do that. If you want to send some Bitcoin Cash and understand the mechanics of how to do that in code, We've got a very small example to do that. If you want to create an SLP token or send an SLP token or explore the world of these NFT, these non-fungible tokens, we've got examples for that as well. And so that's where you want to go if you're a developer and you want to just get started quickly. And then we've got these videos further down that you can watch that walk through the code if you want a little more hand holding. And to get started immediately for free without any cost, we maintain our own testnet faucet. So for people who are unfamiliar with mainnet and testnet, there's the mainnet is where everything happens. That's any Bitcoin Cash wallet you interact with, that's going to be on mainnet. Testnet is set aside for developers to work on, and you need your own testnet coins. And so we maintain one of the few testnet faucets that are out there. You can get some free testnet coins. That'll let you immediately start working with the code. We also have this Explorer user interface. And so if people are unfamiliar with that nomenclature, UI always means user interface, UX means user experience. They're usually used together, because they represent two very closely related things. So this gets back to the REST API. If you're not a JavaScript developer and you want to see how to interact with our REST API, you can go here, and it's a visual interaction with our REST API. So that's another really great way to just get started very quickly and easily interacting with the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. Again, it's free. We do offer a paid service. So like Block that was on earlier, we offer managed infrastructure. So that those first 3 layers with the indexers and the APIs, like we can run that so that you don't have to if you're a small business. And we offer free stuff, but only to a certain layer. We don't let people just run amok and cause issues for everybody else using the service. We limit it. So if you're building a real business application and you don't want to be limited by those artificial limitations, we offer a paid service that expands those rate limits. And so this automatic jot handling thing is the example code that you need to study in order to make your apps like just work. And then this SLP Wallet Library, this is a command line wallet. If you've ever used Electron Cash, it's similar in functionality in that it's an HD wallet. It's privacy focused, except it doesn't have any graphical user interface. So it's not for normal people. It's developers only are going to be comfortable with this command line. And because it's a command line and you don't have the extra baggage that comes with trying to develop a graphical user interface, it lets developers like rapidly prototype. You can just rapidly start doing new things, but you start from square one with a whole fully functional HD wallet that's privacy focused and can work with SLP tokens. So that's where you start, and then you can immediately start prototyping your new idea on top of this. And everything, I want to emphasize that everything that I've talked about is 100% open source, that entire stack, all the software involved. And let me show that real quickly. What I need to do is get to the menu that's behind the menu. Sorry, technical difficulties here. I think Zoom has changed their user interface.
You need to change the tab?
Yeah, I need to change the tab and I can't get behind it.
Oh,
that's fine. I can get to it this way. Anyways, this is the documentation layer. I was going to show the cash strap. So I was talking about infrastructure. So these layers here, everything in here is open source, and while Fullstack.cash will run managed infrastructure for people, what we don't want to do is create a walled garden and make people have to use our infrastructure. So we want to stick to our decentralized open source roots. And so we maintain this page that I call the cash strap. And so everything you need to spin up your own infrastructure so that you're not dependent on Fullstack.cash is here. And it includes precinct databases. So if you know anything about running your own full node, you know that you have to sync from Genesis, and that is like anywhere from like 2 days to 2 weeks to do something like that. And then each indexer requires its own synced database. And so it's a very expensive process to spin up all of this data, all of this infrastructure, which is why we host it. But if you want to host your own, everything you need is here, and all the databases are pre-synced. So you can actually download this data and get up and running in just a few hours with your own infrastructure. We offer an ABC full node. Blockbook is kind of an indexer. It's actually a great indexer, but we're starting to phase it out just because Fulcrum came out. A huge shout out to Kalen, who developed this Fulcrum Electrum X indexer. It does the same thing, except it has like half the footprint of Blockbook, and then the SLPDB, which is the indexer for SLP tokens. So this is the core. This is these bottom two layers that you're going to need to run your own infrastructure. So I don't want to go any further into that because it's only there if you want it. We're here to abstract away all of that unnecessary technical knowledge. For a small monthly fee, we charge $30 to get access to all of this infrastructure. And so let me also talk about the documentation and how you would get started. So this documentation page is where I send a lot of people who want to dive, who want to know more, who want to dive into what is Bitcoin, what is Bitcoin Cash, how does it all work, how do all these pieces fit together. This is where you want to go. I've got links to this Mastering Bitcoin Cash book, which is based on Andreas Antonopoulos' Mastering Bitcoin book, but it's been customized for Bitcoin Cash. It's hosted by bitcoin.com. And so this is like the technical reference. If you are just getting started down this road of development and you're trying to wrap your head around the Bitcoin protocol, this is the place to start. It's not an exhaustive technical reference, but it is definitely the place to start. And everyone who reads this book finds themselves going back to it almost every day, because there's always more to learn. You read it once and you're like, okay, I got it. And then you start doing things and then you realize I don't got it. And so you go back and you read it again. So just can't emphasize how important this is as a technical reference for people who are trying to approach the ecosystem. We've got some of these more Fullstack.cash oriented documentation. So the cache stack is something that I want to show here. This was sort of the article that I wrote while I was still at bitcoin.com that kicked off the Fullstack.cash or the idea of the cache stack. And so this is a very long article. It has, several YouTube videos, but this I talked about earlier about how this diagram here is kind of like a roadmap. Well, this article is how to find out where you are on that roadmap. It talks about the difference between protocol development and application development. It talks about the difference between front-end developers and back-end developers. And so just to show it here on the stack, the full node is your protocol developer. When people talk about, the differences between developers and miners and the market and these sort of three opposing forces that make the whole Bitcoin ecosystem work, they're talking about protocol developers, people who specifically work on full nodes and maybe indexers. And so application developers is basically everything above that, the REST API up. And then within the area of development, most developers, especially when they get started, they'll distinguish themselves as either a front-end developer or a back-end developer. So a front-end developer is concerned with everything that's happening in the web browser, the user interface, the apps on your phone, the things that people interact with. That's what front-end developers, so they're concerned with the way things look and the user interface and the widgets and how everything's animated and the colors. That's what front-end developers are concerned about. Back-end developers, they're differentiated by not dealing with a user interface like that. They worry about, that would be like the middle area. So a front-end developer would be the top of the stack, that your app part. And then a backend developer would be more like developing that JavaScript library and developing that REST API and maybe running all that infrastructure and keeping it running. And so that's sort of the area of backend development. So those are some really important concepts for someone who's approaching the idea of building their own app or an app for a business on Bitcoin Cash. Is these concepts of front end versus back end, and application developer versus protocol developer. Those are some pretty high level important concepts to keep in mind. Okay, so I talked about that. I showed some examples. There's developer.bitcoin.com. I'll just show some of these other apps. So one of the things we had to figure out, I haven't finished talking about this documentation page. Let me wrap that up. This is also where you can come to find all the developer documentation that you're going to need to interact with the Fullstack.cash cache stack. This JavaScript library here, we call that BCHJS, and you can find, this is the one documentation page you need for that. The REST API, we call that BCH API, and this is a link to the documentation page for that. So that's the one documentation page you need to know about that. This Jot BCH lib, this is the thing that if you're a business and you want to scale up and just make your app work, this is the library that you need to integrate. And what it does is it lets you you have an account on Fullstack.cash, you send it Bitcoin Cash, and as long as you do that, everything just works. And that's enabled by this library. It just makes sure everything just works. And so that's the documentation for that. And the one thing you need to know about that. I've also got these community resources. And so this is incredibly important for people who are approaching this space and are trying to orient themselves. Tutorials.cash is a curated library of YouTube videos. And it's a great place for non-technical and technical people to start from. It's got some of my videos on there. It's got a lot of videos by other people in the Bitcoin Cash community. And the slp.dev is the what's the word? Anyways, it's the main source of documentation for anybody who wants to get started in the world of SLP tokens as a developer. It's going to walk you through all the tools that are out there, explain what SLP tokens are. You can find a link to the specification if you really want to get down and dirty and know SLP tokens at a deep level. But mostly it's the documentation for all the different JavaScript libraries that are out there that you can use to immediately start taking advantage of SLP tokens in your business, including non-fungible tokens, which I don't think that gets enough attention in the Bitcoin Cash space because we are ready and there is a growing market share in the crypto space of NFT tokens. And I just looked at the cost to send one DAI on Ethereum was 74 cents. To send $1 in DAI cost 74 cents in a transaction fee. So the transaction fees for tokens are increasing Ethereum. And so a lot of people in the Ethereum space are now starting to look at Bitcoin Cash tokens because our transaction fees are still sub-cent fees. And we have non-fungible tokens. We have what would be considered ERC20 tokens, even though we don't call them that on the Bitcoin Cash chain. And so that all exists. So if you're someone who is traditionally more into Ethereum and you're worried about these transaction fees, you're not alone. And this is where you want to look if you want to explore tokens on Bitcoin Cash. So with that, so one of the things that I've been working for the last 2 years on basically everything but this where it says your app, that top layer, because that's essentially like the one thing this is the reason why people are buying Fullstack.cash service, because their job is that top layer and we handle everything below that top layer. But we needed to inspire people and give them an example of what they can do with this. And so this is a new initiative that we've launched lately. It's wallet.fullstack.cash. Notice the big red notice at the top saying this is an open alpha and things will break. So be aware of that. This is still very clunky. But another aspect of the business that we do at Fullstack.cash is we do consulting. And one of the ways that I think probably differentiates us from Block is we're more focused on grassroots and small businesses and customize who need some sort of wallet application that they can easily customize. Whereas I think Block is a much more professional organization who's going after like the larger enterprise type customers. And we hope to do that someday, but we're not there yet. We're still just trying to get all the nuts and bolts and the workflow working. And this wallet is really the last piece in that. So I talked about Legos and how important this concept of Legos is. And that's what this wallet is. It's similar to mint.bitcoin.com. If you go there and try that out, that's another web wallet where you can create SLP tokens and send SLP tokens. You'll be able to do that here, but what's very different about this web app is that it's open source, and it really uses that Lego mentality where we're taking the approach where everything that can be an add-on should be an add-on. So this wallet, its base wallet is very minimal. It can send and receive Bitcoin Cash, it can send and receive SLP tokens, and that's really all it does. But then we have a dozen different add-ons planned out, like sweeping tokens off of a paper wallet, generating a paper wallet, privacy using something similar to Cash Shuffle. What are some of the other examples? We've got a slew of add-ons that we're going to add on. So, and because this is MIT licensed and 100% open source, every business is free to take this and white label this. And so this is another aspect of the business that we're ramping up for is consulting to sort of handhold and help businesses white label this and customize it for their own use case. A lot of the businesses I'm working with right now, they want to create their own token. They want to have something that involves a token sale. They want to do non-KYC, non-custodial, on-chain, trustless sort of token sales and betting, those types of things, like leveraging that escrow contract at local.bitcoin.com that I was talking about. These are the kinds of business applications that are very hot right now. I'm talking to multiple businesses, and they're all saying the same thing. They all want these very same things. And this is what the wallet's going to enable. And it looks real clunky in the browser. What I've got displayed here are all the different SLP tokens that my wallet's holding. You can see my balance on the left. And this is mobile first. So if I shrink it, it looks a little bit more now like a web app with the menu that slides in and slides out and these different cards. So this is a mobile first wallet. It's designed to look good on a smartphone, and then a desktop browser is a secondary consideration. And another important thing that we're emphasizing, these links here in the footer, you can access this web wallet over Tor and over IPFS. So it's designed to be as uncensorable as possible. And businesses who want to use this, say on like the dark web, and don't necessarily want to advertise their IP address for law enforcement to crack down on, you can serve this over Tor. And so this is a big thing, because another big piece of our emphasis is on the gray market, not the black market, not the white market, but the gray market, which basically encompasses Venezuela, Argentina, their economies. Most of the economy of Brazil would be considered a gray market. And we're really focused on like South America as a use case, and those developing economies that are really struggling right now. They need these types of solutions. They need to have a smooth user interface where a person just goes to a web page. They don't need to download anything. There's no app store that can like tell me that I can't let my users use this software. If they want to maintain their privacy using Tor, they can do that. If they are in a place with bad internet connection, they can use IPFS and just download the entire app to their computer and use it in a nearly offline use case. So these are the thoughts that we're having, and the way we're differentiating ourselves from other web wallets and other services in the space is we're really trying to stick to our open source, decentralized roots, but bring these ideas into the modern web JavaScript workflow. And so that's basically where we're at. I hope I haven't overwhelmed people. I'm pretty excited about this stuff, if you can't tell. I will basically leave it there. We've got a couple minutes if there's any questions that happen to pop up.
Really outstanding talk. Let's see. Any questions from the chat? All right. Well, Naomi wants to know how you got so fabulous.
Well, she's pretty fabulous. I gotta give my hat off to her for just being a champion for the rest of us who don't have a voice, and pointing out all of the ways our privacy is being encroached on. She's been doing a wonderful job of raising awareness.
Hey. Here's a question from the chat. Will you be releasing SDKs for Android and iOS?
No, we're going to let other people do that. The reason we're not doing that is because we're trying to avoid the app stores, because every developer I know who has tried to build an app has had issues with the app stores. And as, I mean, we're seeing so much censorship right now around the internet, and the app stores are very much have censorship dialed. Like they can just zap an app off the app store like that. And we don't want to give anybody that kind of power over us. And so that's why we focused more on the web page approach. This is a really important concept for entrepreneurs to understand, because it seems like everyone is just shocked when their app is not permitted into the app store, even though it happens to virtually everyone in the crypto space. So, you know, like I said, we have the REST API and we have the JavaScript libraries. So if anybody wants to take that final step and use them in the sort of native programming languages, they're welcome to do so. We'll work with you, but it's just not the battle we want to fight.
So basically, your cash stack could enable the creation of, say, like a wallet or another app, but that's actually just a website. And so, like on Android, for example, you could anchor that to your home screen, and then it behaves like an app, but it's just a web page.
Exactly. Yeah, one thing we might do just to cater to the desktop users is we might repackage everything in Electron, like Shama's done with Stamp, and that way it's a true desktop kind of experience, even though we really wouldn't have to do much to make that happen.
And so in that way, you could write one app. Essentially, I mean, you write, just one set of code, one app that'll work on both desktop and mobile.
Exactly.
And
really, you know, like another sort of innovative thing we're doing is one of the clients we're working with is they're creating their own token to do a local currency for farmers. And it's going to use the post office protocol, which is another add-on we're currently developing. So they won't need to know anything about Bitcoin Cash. They're just going to have their local coin that they use to trade with their local community, and it's going to use Bitcoin Cash. But that conversation about what is Bitcoin Cash, that's something they can have later. They can just immediately start using their local currency to start trading produce with one another. And and it's a very smooth onboarding process. They just need to use a web page. There's nothing to download or install.
That's really interesting. So you're, as part of the cash stack, you're also writing your own implementation of the post office protocol.
Yeah. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on when we talk about the PSF and the token. But yes, we have an open source post office server and a client add-on for the wallet, and it currently works within Armani's post office server, which is currently the only one that is functional and can be used today. So we made sure that it is backwards compatible with his, but we're going to have, as far as I'm aware, the only open source post office server coming out next month.
That's super cool. So somebody like me, who's like more of a biz guy, an ideas guy. I mean, I'm not completely ignorant when it comes to tech. I'm a Unix sysadmin, web developer for many years, but I've never written JavaScript. But so basically to use your cash stack, I need to become a JavaScript developer essentially.
Yeah, and we've tried to make that education process like give you little bites to bite off at a time, and that's that examples page and those little Lego example blocks I was telling you about. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's a lot to learn here, and so the best we can do is to just try and break it off into little bites to make it easy for people to learn.
That's really great. Yeah, if we're over at Ignite, we're aiming to cultivate kind of a group of builders in the developing world, and I think it'd be really great, if we can put that together with your excellent work there.
Yeah, and so if people want to know more or reach out, go to Fullstack.cash, scroll down to the bottom of the page, the footer, and there's ways to contact us. There's Telegram channel, email, the GitHub repository where you can find all the code.
Right. Okay, Chris Troutner, Fullstack.cash. Thank you so much for this talk. It's really been very interesting. And Chris is going to be back later on a panel conversation on a similar topic, right?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to talk about the Permissionless Software Foundation, which is the parent organization to Fullstack.cash, and it has its own token.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Okay, thanks, Chris. We'll talk to you again soon.